The time has finally come. From all the shit talking I've done on my podcast and the occasional videos here I've done on YouTube about how much I'm not a fan of how Heroes of Olympus came to be, I'm finally womaning up and sitting down and doing a huge video series about rewriting Heroes of Olympus. Now, you may know that Unclaimed Demigod did a series of that here on YouTube as well. It's one of the things that they are known for. They are amazing. Check out their channel. But I've also done a video on rewriting The Lost Hero, and it is doing that video that has inspired me to continue to do things like that. But I'm going to be going into a little bit more detail than I did with that video, in that I will be doing 2 videos per book for Heroes of Olympus. So I'll be doing Heroes of Olympus, The Lost Hero, Part 1, which will be looking at how I would fix the current storyline that they have with how it kind of flows through story-wise. And then a Part 2, which is how much I would change the series if I were to rewrite it properly, and the level of differences in which there would be if I did do that. And we're doing that with every book. Now, these videos won't be that regular because I'm going through the series at the moment on my podcast, The Best Damn Camp, and because I don't want to miss things, I'm going to be doing it as I go through the books themselves. So there'll definitely be at least Lost Hero and Son of Neptune within the coming months, but it may be a little while longer until I do any of the others. So hopefully you guys will have some patience for that so I can get to them, and hopefully you'll be intrigued as to what I'll be talking about. But for now, let's get into rewriting Heroes of Olympus, The Lost Hero, Part 1. Wow, that was a long intro. But let's get into it. So I'm going to be breaking this down into 3 different parts. One is related to plot, one is related to characters, another to relationships, and another into villains. Now, the plot aspect is a little bit longer, so I'll be starting with that first. So let's start with plot. Now, if you watch my Rewriting The Lost Hero video that I did, I think about 2 years ago now, you'll know some of the basic elements in which I would change for the story, which is mainly relating to the opening and a few things that happen with that. So we're looking at the opening part first, where for me, what I would have happen is Jason waking up completely alone in the wilderness near Camp Half-Blood. Think like Lost's opening, where he's woken up after a plane crash. Sort of like that, where Jason is battered up, he's looking not great, feeling not great either, but he's in the middle of the wilderness and it's kind of like, what the hell am I doing here? It is around this time that Grover, yes, I'm bringing Grover back because this boy deserves way more than what he got in Heroes of Olympus, which was a brief cameo and then never seen or heard from again until Trials of Apollo. Just get rid of Hedge. Get rid of Coat Hedge. He did not need to be there. So it is Grover who then appears with Piper and Leo. Piper and Leo have actually been best friends for a period of time and were at the same school together, which was the troubled kids school, quote unquote, where they were found by Grover, who is bringing them to camp. The only problem, since they've been getting nearer to camp, more problems have been arising in the fact that there are storm spirits following them. Having found Jason and Grover sensing this power from him being, a searcher, he decides to bring him along, but that leads to more storm spirits following them, which leads them to having to fight, or at least Grover and Jason having to fight, and Piper and Leo just hoping for the best with throwing things at these storm spirits, because they have no idea what is going on. Whereas Jason seems to have some natural instincts, which is very confusing to Grover, but he doesn't have the time to actually deal with this information because he is kidnapped. So following the similar beats, just in a different location and a different relationship setup. It is then at the border of Camp Half-Blood, when they've been running after Grover has told them, keep going that way and you'll find your way to a safe haven, that they meet Annabeth Chase and Will Solace. I'm making Will more of an important character because he needs to be for what happens at the end of Blood of Olympus. And so it is at this point where they're trying to usher them into camp that Annabeth notices that Jason is missing a shoe and remembers that Hera told her that the answer for where her boyfriend Percy Jackson is lies with the boy with one shoe. Unfortunately, this is when we realise that Jason is an amnesiac. He has no idea his past. He has no idea how he got there. He has no idea who he is. All he remembers is his name. And so, yeah, it's following similar beats to the original book, but it's just going to be slightly different. And I think the way in which this is done would work so much better. And I'll be getting into that a little bit more. But to kind of continue with the opening section, there will be no walking around camp. There'll be no camp aspect. Well, obviously they'll be in camp. But the showing the 3 different kids around Camp Half-Blood was nearly like, okay, probably not exactly 100 pages, but it was stupidly long and unnecessarily long, considering we know everything about Camp Half-Blood. I know these characters don't, but just say they're being shown around. Don't actually do it, especially for 3 individual characters to be shown around Camp Half-Blood in 3 different ways. No. Just introduce Piper and Leo individually, and a little bit about Jason. Obviously, he doesn't know much about himself, but show his instinctive nature. Show the fact that he has some powers relating to him. Obviously, then the prophecy element of the prophecy of the 7 and how he knows that instantly as well and recites it in Latin. So it's immediately just kind of like, this is sus. Also, additionally, don't have Chiron know who Jason is, because he literally could not know who Jason is, because Jason was 2 when he was given to Juno. Chiron didn't even know Talia at this point, because Talia was only 5, maybe a little bit older, and he doesn't meet Talia until she's 11. So Chiron quite literally could not know who Jason was and the fact that he was meant to be dead. It was stupid, so just don't have that. Just have Chiron see the tattoo, hear him speaking in Latin, and being a bit sus about it. That's all you need. We don't need that additional drama because it makes no sense. What I'd additionally like, alongside the Leo and Piper aspect, is firstly, establish the fact they are best friends, because that is something that should have been established in the books originally, because Jason wasn't ever actually their friend, which means Leo and Piper were only really friends. Not that the books ever really showed that. I would also like Annabeth and Piper to have more of a development of relationship in these early stages of bonding over the fact that they had neglectful dads and, you know, them just bonding, that initial part, because that then leads to the fact that I want Annabeth to go on this quest with them, so her connection to being part of the 7 actually makes sense. Conversation for another time. But that is the opening part and some of the Camp Half-Blood section for The Lost Hero. The next bit that I think needs some additional changes is in relating to the quest. Now, the quest is going to be a little bit more slightly complicated in some ways, not necessarily if it's kind of written in a good way, but because Jason, Piper and Leo don't have an established relationship, which admittedly they didn't have in The Lost Hero right now anyway, because Jason has no idea who these people are, because he has no memory of them, because their memories of him are fake. So in this sense, it also makes more sense because they are getting to know him through the fact that the 3 of them came into camp together, lost someone who was helping them get to safety, and additionally have no idea what's going on, and just kind of, they can bond slightly on their confusion of what's going on, of coming to this new place, even though Jason feels like there's something familiar about this world of demigods and gods. It would make more sense for their building relationship and for their bond, because they will be bonding over the fact that they have no idea what's going on. And additionally, Piper and Leo being friends and kind of inviting Jason into their group because he's a new kid as well, I think it would make a lot of sense to them, because they're 2 kids who got the worst of it at school, because Piper being Native American, Leo being, you know, ADHD incarnate. Them bonding together and then bonding with Jason as new kids, as strange kids, because, you know, they're older demigods who have survived with no problems, which is weird and unheard of in most cases, that there's something for them to work from and work together with. And I think it'd be interesting to go in with this dynamic, similar to kind of what the whole Percy and Annabeth and Grover situation of, you've got 2 people who previously know each other in the case of Percy and Grover, and a 3rd person coming in who has some knowledge of the world. So Piper and Leo, established friendship, Jason coming in because they know a few things, even if they don't technically know some things, and then Annabeth joining because she has more knowledge, because she can actually provide context and insight to what they're going through and what they're going to be doing. Additionally, Annabeth joining because she thinks maybe if she goes on this quest with them, it'll help her gain answers as to what happened with Percy, because Jason clearly is in some form the key to the answers for what happened to Percy. The North Wind situation will still happen as it does in the books, although in this case it'll be Annabeth who suggests going to find the North Wind because of the storm spirits. And yeah, basically that whole thing will continue to play out as it does. The only thing that I want changed is removing the fact that Leo's a creep towards women and the creepy kids towards... You just don't need creepy people. Leo doesn't need to be weird towards women. Other male characters don't need to be creepy towards Piper. I mean, you just don't need any of that. They then head to Chicago after the North Wind's, suggestion, and they meet Medea. And so basically this is the thing I'm going to mention slightly later on, but only have Medea. Don't have Midas. You don't need both of them. One or the other. Medea is technically the only one that's actually important, so just keep Medea. We then still have the similar situation of Leo and Jason fighting, but in this case it makes a hell of a lot more sense because Jason has no idea who these people are, would be untrusting, and also be considered untrustworthy to Leo in relation to his friendship with Piper, because maybe he's seeing something kind of slightly bond between them and is worried about losing a friend, but also feeling insignificant or, not as, what's the right word for this? Not threatened in that he has feelings for Piper, but threatened in the sense that he feels like he could be egged out of this friendship because Jason is, in a sense, quote unquote, better than him. And him being someone with low confidence, that would lead to this infighting. And then obviously Piper saving the situation, and with Annabeth on this quest as well, her then also fighting with Jason and maybe also fighting with Leo. Just there'd be a whole thing there with Piper then being the one having to solve the situation, which I do still like, I do still want. I would also then remove the Cyclops part with Mama Gasket, or Ma Gasket, whatever her name is, because it's not necessary. It only adds to Jason gets knocked out all the time stuff, and all it additionally adds is Leo's abilities to help with others, which, he has a lot of those moments in general with taming Festus, with getting them a ride in general, with his know-how with mechanics. He has a lot of skills, and a lot of them are used later on with their fight with the giant on Mount Diablo. Just have those moments there. I don't know why I pulled that face. There's a lot of opportunities for Leo to have moments to shine outside of the Cyclops moment, because we can just have they're slowly reforming again very quickly in front of our eyes with Medea. Instead, they kill Medea, but then she seems to start to reform, so they've got to make a run for it because they barely managed to defeat her this time. They don't know what will happen a second time. So we then get the insight of monsters aren't dying or creatures aren't dying, magical figures that's crept out of the underworld aren't dying. This is not good. So we already get those hints for that without it dragging the story too much and being part of a plot point that is significant, because the Cyclopses really weren't. The only significance that comes from it is seeing that there are two different camps. But we've got that with Jason anyway, and we can have more hints in relation to Jason. Oh, and of course with the Medea scene we find Grover and Annabeth. Really nice reunion. I think that'd be great. And then additionally to that, Grover saying that they need to go to Mount Diablo because that is where one of the giants are. It is at this point that Piper reveals that her dad is also on that mountain because he was captured by the giants. What I think would be really interesting to do with the dad stuff is that Leo already knows. He was just kind of keeping it secret and helping Piper because they're friends. I think it would make more sense for her to be telling Leo more than it would be to tell anyone else beforehand, because she doesn't know what to do, and they would have such a good friendship because they've bonded together with real memories that I think it would make sense for her to confide in him. And so he was actually helping her to, in a sense, kind of sabotage the mission. I don't know, I think it'd be interesting because it would also add more to their dynamic. Hopefully you guys get what I mean. We then still have the werewolf situation with Lycaon and the hunters. The only thing with the hunters is that I would remove, honestly, the Talia and Jason sibling element, because I never liked it, if I'm honest. I thought it was interesting when I was reading it the first couple of times, but it definitely now these days feels more like it was added to make Jason seem more interesting, which, considering he's not interesting in the first place with how he's presented in the book, it doesn't really do him any favours, because all I think about Jason is he's Talia's brother. That's all I kind of end up thinking about him. Just develop Jason's character as Jason. Don't tie him to other characters. That doesn't help him in the long run. Just have it be that the hunters have turned up because they're following the scent of Lycaon to defeat him, because he's like their arch nemesis sort of thing, but they help them towards Mount Diablo, and then they've got to go to the wolf house, because that is where the problem seems to be, which is then where we get the reference to the fact that they need to go to the wolf house, because that is where the final thing has to happen. But Mount Diablo comes first to help save Piper's dad, but also to get rid of one of the giants that is there. They just didn't know about the wolf house until this point, and they know that they've got more problems than just one giant. They've got a 2-giant problem. It then kind of follows in the similar vein of how the story goes, of they get to Mount Diablo, they defeat the giant, they free Piper's dad. Piper's dad is not in a good way. She gives him this potion that helps erase his memory of what happens, because his mind is literally fracturing. And then they make their way to the wolf house. The only thing that I would like changed with this is in relation to the giants, because the giants have always been so easily defeated. What I think would be more interesting is, when it looks like they're melting away and kind of disintegrating, is that their body is actually pulled into the earth and disappears, which isn't a normal way for a monster to disappear. So that has all of the heroes being like, this is kind of suspicious, and I'm kind of nervous. It also gives hints to a possible later big bad in relation to Gaia, but we'll get onto that when I get to the villains section. Then, of course, they head to the wolf house, and things play out in a similar way as they do in the books. The only thing that I won't have happen is Jason dying, because he's so stupid that he forgets to close his eyes when a goddess is showing her true form. I hated that so much. This boy, at this point, has remembered everything. Not that we're told, but he has remembered that he is a Roman praetor. He had helped defeat a titan with his own bare hands. Like, he's done all these incredible feats, and yet still doesn't close his eyes when a goddess is showing her true form and dies. Just get rid of it. He's not stupid. Like, that was unnecessary. Get rid of it. And then they head back to camp after this, and it is revealed that Jason comes from another camp, and that's where he believes Percy Jackson to be. Dun 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 dun. Drama. So I know I've not gone as in depth about the plot as I probably could have, but those are like the main things that I think should have been changed, or could have been changed, in relation to the narrative for the Lost Hero. To firstly reduce the length, because let me just grab this book. This is the longest book in Heroes of Olympus. The first book is bigger than the finale. The finale is actually the shortest book in the series. This book is, let's have a look, close to 600 pages. Yeah, it's close to 600 pages. Unnecessary. So what I would have it be is a reduction. So just basically, it's just streamlining the plot, also making the engagement with the characters more relatable and interesting, and make a lot more sense, because the fake memory stuff I always hated, because it's like Rick wanted to do all 5 books of Percy Jackson and the Olympians, build up a relationship between the trio automatically, instead of just rehashing out the creation of a relationship and the building of a bond between characters. It's like, it's just kind of, I don't want to do that, so I'm just going to automatic friendship, but just one of them doesn't remember it. Just develop the relationship, because he then doesn't do that afterwards, even though one of them has no knowledge of this friendship that he has with these people. This way, there is actual development of a relationship. The connection to other characters makes sense. Annabeth's involvement with it will also work towards her becoming part of the Seven, because the fact that she wasn't in this book and then is basically appears in Mark of Athena, has her book for Mark of Athena and has her quest and all this sort of stuff, while being part of the Seven, without any explanation for why she's part of the Seven, other than she wanted to come to see Percy. I think having her being more involved, maybe not necessarily going on the quest, but helping them get to where they need to be, communicating with them as much as she possibly can by giving Piper her cell phone, maybe, for example, which I know isn't good for demigods, but, you know, things aren't working well in general for them. I don't know, I just think there's a way to do it, to have her be involved, that would make sense for why she's part of the Seven later on. And also help, I think, the story in some way, because it's good to have new characters. But considering this is meant to be a build-up to this huge adventure with 7 demigods, 2 of which are characters that are previously established, it'd be good to have her having a connection with these characters prior to the events of the 7 going on this quest. But let's move in to villains. Now, I've covered a little bit of this in relation to the Medea and Midas element, but also slightly to do with the Margasket and Cyclops stuff. Basically, I don't want Midas or Cyclopses in this story, because both of those sections dragged out the plot unnecessarily and added nothing to the story except small elements. Midas one didn't really at all. Literally the only significance that comes from the Midas story is that in Trials of Apollo, the Midas's son appears in that. That's like, as far as I can remember, and admittedly I've finished reading Lost Hero at the start of this year, so I may be forgetting this, but Midas's story and significance is unnecessary. There's no reason for it. The Cyclops' one, yeah, okay, there's some small little things in relation to figuring out that, you know, monsters aren't dying. But like I said, that can be fixed with Medea, of having her be killed and then almost very quickly reforming. Or even the storm spirits that they were fighting, they reformed very quickly. Reformed, that is a word. So show that all with Medea, because Medea, at least, there's providing of information of where they need to go next. There's the refinding of Grover, who's going to be joining them on the rest of that quest. There's, you know, the conflict between the characters to build in the fact that, you know, they don't know each other. There is a lack of trust in these relationships because they have no idea what they're doing. They have no connection with each other. There's a lot more significance to what happens with Medea's chapters than in the other ones. And all the significant elements that can come from Midas and the Cyclopses can be inputted into the Medea story. Especially considering Medea actually has significance in Heroes of Olympus, because she reappears a few times in this and in Trials of Apollo. She is consistently a reoccurring villainous character. Have her be more significant. Additionally, for the bigger villains, the giants should be the only villains. The giants should be the only big bads in this, with Gaia being a more in the background. Like, she is biding her time. She's still asleep. She's still helping the giants, but she doesn't rise at the end of this series. She's just helping them try and find a way to kind of get back on top and destroy the gods. Maybe even then end up having her be the villain in Trials of Apollo. I think that'd be really interesting, of her helping her kids, not with the intention of helping her to be able to rise, but because she hopes that with them in control, eventually she can then rise. So her helping her kids stay alive and taking them to Olympus when they've been quote unquote defeated. So they're then not actually properly defeated. So in the case of, I don't remember any of the giants' names. The giants' names are really hard. But the one on Mount Diablo, he's pulled into the earth. We don't actually see his body disintegrate. Maybe even that when Zeus is about to help Jason take out the giant, he disappears. They don't actually see them taking out the giant. He's already gone before gods and demigods could join together and defeat a giant. Same with the one at the Wolf House. In that case, they technically I think he does escape. But what they should do in that case is they just slow it down. But the earth actually takes him back down and he disappears. And they have no idea what's been happening with that. They have no idea what's helping these giants. But it's something related to the earth. But they don't fully know why or what. And just don't have Gaia talking to anyone. Don't have Gaia's involvement at all. Just have it be the giant and some of the minor gods who are still kind of pissed with the Olympians because they've not really been keeping their promise. I think that would work a whole lot more instead of having two big bads that don't really have any, you're not really worried about the giants. They're defeated multiple times within books. Like we had two giants in this book, and both of them are pretty easily dealt with. And then when we meet them again in Blood of Olympus, I don't know about anyone else. I didn't care. I didn't care about that fight because we'd already defeated them once before. In this case, there is more anxiety about that because something else is helping the gods. Something else is helping the giants. We just don't know what. And it means that none of them have ever actually been defeated. They've just been moved elsewhere. I think it adds a little bit more uncertainty and anxiety about what's going to lead up to that final battle. Additionally, with the fact that that final battle will be a lot more interesting. Going into characters now. So obviously I'm going to talk about the main three because they're the ones I think are the most significant. Jason. Oh, Jason. He needs to be a lot more instinctual with his abilities in the story. Like, he's meant to be this incredible fighter, like this incredible Roman fighter who rose up to Praetor when no one seemed to expect it, chose the cohort that no one believed in, all these incredible things. And yet he's knocked out multiple times. He's good with a sword, but he doesn't really have that many moments to shine with it throughout the book. We need more moments of him, in a sense, showing off to believe his abilities. Because he talks about how he defeated a Titan one-on-one. But we've not seen any other incredible feats in the book so far. So hearing that, I'm just kind of like, okay, sure. I didn't really believe it because this guy had been knocked out multiple times by rocks. Show how incredible he is instead of telling us. Additionally, show more memories from him. Show more of what he remembers. Raina, his camp, Lupa, the wolves, his training, maybe even flashes to do with his mum when he was a child, flashes of his training, just little things to show who he was. Because we know nothing about Jason. Consistently throughout the series, we learn nothing new about him except small little things that don't even let us know who he is as a character. Show more. How does he feel when he gets these flashes of memories? How often is he having these? What is his personality traits? Just something. Show more of Jason. He's meant to be almost like rebel-like because he went against protocols of the Romans by choosing the cohort no one liked, by going against the grain. Show this rebellious side. Show this almost cheeky nature that he has. We need more of that. Additionally, show his natural leadership. Show him training Leo and Piper in how to use their weapons. Show him, supporting them. Even though he doesn't know who they are, he's naturally taking on this leadership role to help them feel more confident in their abilities. Show him as a leader so they will actually follow him and trust in his instincts, because right now them following him makes no sense beyond the fact that they have fake memories of him, which currently don't really match up to what they currently know of him in this form. So it makes even less sense for them to be following him. Then with Piper. Piper's dad still going to be kidnapped. There's still going to be tension between her and her father and their relationship being complicated. But she tells Leo. Her and Leo have been good friends for, say, a couple of years now at this point, we'll say. And so she doesn't feel afraid about telling him because they have this close relationship. She's terrified about what's happening with her dad. She's terrified about this blackmail. She's terrified that people are going to hate her. But Leo she knows will always believe in her because he's never given her a reason to not trust him. Show that relationship. Show the fact that she can trust in other people and that she has built relationships with other people. She's the child of the goddess of love and beauty, a goddess in a sense of relationships. She would have a strong bond with her friends. I think it'd be more believable for her to be a child of Aphrodite, and also lead to her embracing the Aphrodite childness, because she knows it's in relation to relationships, and Leo is her best friend. She would trust him with anything. And just as a whole, focus on her friendship with Leo, and also her building in confidence in her abilities. Even though she's afraid of, what people are going to think of her, she still trusts in herself. She still trusts in herself because Leo does. And in relation to Leo, firstly, none of the misogynistic stuff. Get rid of all of that. Unnecessary, stupid. But to do with his background, keep the fire stuff. That was cool. Keep the killed mother stuff. But get rid of the Gaia element and the fact that Gaia did it. Have it be that it was his powers that did it, that he lost control one time and it led to his mother getting caught in flames. But him not knowing, and him living with the guilt with that, and Piper knowing this story. So they have each other as emotional support because they are best friends. I want Leo and Piper's friendship to be more significant in this series, and them being each other's confidants. Sort of like how Grover and Percy were sometimes, and obviously sometimes Percy and Annabeth too. I want them to have this bond. And so he is afraid of his abilities because of that past, and it is Piper and later even Jason who, becomes more of a friend with the two of them, who helps him gain more confidence in his skills and more confidence in himself and his abilities, and show that just because he's made mistakes doesn't make him a bad person. And no, I want more from Leo. Leo is too much of the sarcastic humour character, which isn't a bad thing. You can keep that. But it's too much. We need depth. We need more depth to him. And I mean that for all of the characters. All of the characters in Heroes of Olympus for the 7. A lot of them lack depth. So hopefully these changes will add to the depth of their characters, because there is so much potential with them. And I would like to see it. And that's kind of where we get into the relationship element. And it's kind of a few little things that I brought up here throughout, is Leo and Piper's friendship must be more significant. It must be, in a sense, the linchpin of this questing trio or quadruple, if I write for Annabeth to fully join them on the quest, because their bond is what will make or break this quest. And then additionally, it will make more sense for those two to accept Jason, because he is the outsider, the outcast, the character who knows nothing and nobody, just like them. It will really develop their relationship a lot more, and in a more realistic way, because how it currently is makes no sense. And the fact that it continues to not be developed also makes no sense. Having it this way of a pre-real established relationship between Leo and Piper is what will make this trio stronger in their relationship as friends, because you've got a pre-established one who are bringing someone into that fold because they know what it's like to be an outsider. And so when Jason realizes who he is, realizes where he's from, Piper and Leo, they already have a friendship with him. Yeah, it's going to be weird now that he knows who he is, but he now has people there to be with him when he's trying to figure out how he feels about all of this. I don't know, it makes so much more sense. I don't know if I'm explaining myself properly, but we need this pre-established relationship. And additionally, adding all these different things, it works for Annabeth becoming friends with Piper and Leo, because, traumatic past, not really trusting their abilities, having complicated relationships. It works a lot. And it would also make sense for her being slightly trusting and slightly distrusting of Jason because of his connection to Percy, being missing. I know there's a lot of potential that can come from having Piper and Leo be this linchpin friendship. But this is how I would rewrite Heroes of Olympus, The Lost Hero, and how I think it would make this story a lot stronger, especially for a setup story for this new prophecy journey of the 7. Streamline it a lot, build the friendships, develop the relationships a lot more, and, you know, calm down with the villains. But what do you guys think? Do you think this would make a lot more sense for The Lost Hero? Let me know in the comment sections down below. Be sure to leave thumbs ups, share with your friends, because part 2 will be hopefully coming very soon, where I talk about how drastically I would change the story if I didn't have Annabeth and Percy as part of the 7. Stay tuned for that by hitting the subscribe button and the notification bell. Be sure to check out my Patreon where you can get early access to these videos. And yeah, this was a lot of fun. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.